Okay, so welcome to today's session. It's on functional skills, English focus, and today we're going back to reading. So if you were on the last session to do with reading, we looked at so you're going to get 3 different texts to read through. So we looked at what sort of text you might be given and how to kind of look at those texts and understand what they are. So whether they're informative or descriptive or argumentative, etc. So today's session is all about kind of not just going through and figuring out what type of text it is, but actually picking out those bits of information that we need. So we're actually going to look at locating the information to try and help you to answer those specific questions. Okay, so to utilize the information is basically you picking out that information. Okay, so it's important to not only know how to find the information in text, but also know how to use it once you have found it. The different ways that you can use information generally depend on what type of text the information is contained in and what you intend to do with it. So not only are you reading through it to find out what the text is, what the purpose is, why is that writer written that, but what you're going to do with the information. So you guys are particularly not necessarily going to learn anything or take anything away from those particular texts. They're just there to test your reading skills, to answer the questions that you need to pass the test. Okay, so we're going to look at different reading techniques. So there's a number of different ways of reading the text, depending on the type of information that you're searching for, and obviously the text itself. So, for example, you would not read a novel in the same way as you would read a train station's timetable, but yet you're still trying to get information from whatever you're reading. But instead, it's important that you adapt the way that you read the text, obviously fit the purpose of what you're actually trying to do. So when you're reading a text, the specific information, you're looking for ideas on the main points. There are 3 useful methods, and these are obviously going to now be explained. So first of all, you've got a scanning technique. Okay, so this allows your eyes to kind of search through the words in the text rather than read and understanding every single word. You've then got skimming. So reading in order to get the gist of the text by reading the title and headings and picking out sentences that are key to its purpose. So scanning, you're just glancing over. So it's very easy to get mixed up between scanning and skimming. So scanning is literally just a glance over. Skimming, you're reading a little bit more, but you're not quite necessarily reading it in depth. But then you have got your detailed reading. So that's when obviously you read and understand every single word in the text in order to make sure that you obviously don't miss any of the key information in it. Obviously, there's no point you reading through a novel and scanning or skimming it because you're not really going to know and get the full use of that book. Okay, so first of all, we're going to look at scanning and just break that down a little bit. So you can read texts such as timetables, cookery books, dictionaries and reference books. Though you can read most texts if you're searching for very specific information. So it's a good way of saving time when you're obviously reading large text. There's some tips on how to scan read. So before you scan, have a clear picture in your mind of what information you need. E.g., if you were going to go jump on a train, you need to know where you are and where you're going to go to, and you would just scan that information based on those 2 places. In terms of your exam, you would read the question first that it's asking you about that text. It's all great and well you reading through that text in full and thinking you fully understand it. Then you go and read the question, you're like, oh, well, I weren't really thinking about that when I was reading that text. So go and read the question first. Always my number 1 tip is the first question that you go to, read the question, then go to the text. When obviously you've got 3 different texts, so the first question is not going to be about 3 different texts, it'll probably just be on 1 text. So don't go reading all 3 texts at the same time. Literally read the first question, go to the text it's referring to, so whether that's A, B, or C. And then obviously the second question, it could still be relating to that same text you've just read, or they could now want you to answer a question about the second text. So again, only read that second text, don't go read the last one that you haven't read yet. So literally just read them as and when you need them, so you know you've got a clear picture of what you're actually looking for. They use context pages, indexes, titles, page numbers, and subheadings to identify where the information is likely to be. So if you're looking through, I don't know, maybe an information booklet, say a cookery booklet, obviously they're going to have like indexes. So rather than, unless you don't know what you want to cook, you would maybe look in the index and look at, I don't know, chicken dishes or main meals rather than lunchtime meals and things like that. So you kind of, you look for the information in an easier format rather than just kind of going flicking through it. So let your eyes search for the text, skipping over irrelevant information that you don't necessarily need, that you obviously don't need to read every single word. Okay, so moving on to skimming. So skim reading allows you to quickly decide whether or not the text is interesting or relevant, and if you need to read it in more detail. Unfortunately for you guys, whether you find the text in the exam interesting or not, obviously you're going to have to read it in full for you to be able to answer the questions, but hopefully you'll get lucky and you'll get something that you can relate to a little bit. They are usually pretty good. They're quite broad in general, so they're not necessarily specific. They do try and make them relatable to as many people as possible to try and keep you engaged. So when you're skim reading, make sure you use any images or titles that will help you understand quickly what a text is about. So as always, so when you're, for example, if one of your texts is like an article, hopefully that article should have a heading, it should have the subheadings, and that's going to give you an idea of what's in there. Keep in mind likely keywords or phrases to help you identify the important sections of a text. So that could be a key indication. So when you read through the question, whatever it's asking you in the question, they might ask you to relate to something specific. So they might say, what does text A mean about, I don't know, the person's opinion on that travel? So you know that you're looking for the bit that they're talking about when they travelled. So just look out for those obviously keywords about travelling. Always think about the meaning of a text and what it's trying to tell you and what its topic is. And read the first sentence of every paragraph and ask yourself if the information you need is likely to be in this section. So skim reading is really good to use. So once you've read the question, you know what it's asking you, you go and read the text in full, and then you come back and you think, right, do I know the answer to that yet? Not sure. Let me reread that question and let me now go and skim over that text and go back and find the bit where it was talking about that. Okay, so your skimming does come in really handy. So then you've got the most obvious one, which is your detailed reading. So to fully understand a text, you need to read and understand every single word. So detailed reading allows you to pick out information that you might otherwise miss. For example, you may notice disclaimers, additional information, and dates. That you may also notice how information is presented to suit its purpose. So, for example, if your first question is, "What's the purpose of that text?" then you know that you need to read it in detail, because by the end of that text, you need to know why has that been written. What am I going to answer for this question? Also, another tip: if it is asking you what is the purpose of that text, it's not just going to want you to put it's descriptive. It's going to want you to put examples of why it's descriptive. So you need to pick out that specific information. So hopefully, once you've read through the text in detail, by the end of it, you'll be like, well, yeah, that's definitely a descriptive piece of text, or it's argumentative. So you'd write in, text A is argumentative, and here's the reasons why, and you would pick out specific information that is an example of it being argumentative. Okay, so information descriptive texts are usually longer than other types. So these forms of writing require detailed reading so that you fully understand them. Usually they have chapters and subheadings that will help you to identify which paragraphs contain the information you're looking for. So the most important thing when you're doing your reading test is that you need to obtain some key information. So as I've said before, you need to read that question in full. So there's no point you reading that text if you don't know what the question is that they're going to ask you. You need to go back over the question. So read the question, go read the text in full, go back over the question just to make sure you know what you're looking for, then go back to the text and use your skimming. When you're reading that text in full, you already know what the question's asked because you've read that question. So as you're reading through, make notes. Because as I've just told you, it will want you to give examples. So whether it's entirely up to you how you work and what works for you, but you might want to, I don't know, count the lines and put, I don't know, line 10, line 15, or you might just want to put, I wouldn't want you to put, write the whole sentence out on your scrap bit of paper because you're just going to be wasting way too much time because you need to write those examples on the question itself or on the answer, shall I say. But yeah, generally in the exam, unless you're having a written test, which is very unlikely, it will be on the computer, so you won't necessarily be able to highlight it. However, when you're practicing these skills, so anything that you now read, I'm sure you're probably doing a lot more reading now than you've ever done in your life. Obviously, we're staying at home at the moment. You know, we're all finding different things to do and experiencing new things. So if you are reading through anything, if you're looking through a magazine, if you're looking through the paper, try and use these techniques to think, right, okay, why has this person written it? And just put it to practice. Okay, so by the end of you reading through that text, you should know what it is what is the key information that you need to take from that text. What's the purpose of that text? And what's the answer to the question that has led me to actually read that text in the first place. Okay, so how is obviously a really important one. So how are you going to find the information that you need? Okay, so that's where you're then going to decide what reading technique that you're then going to use. So obviously it's going to depend on the question. Some of the questions are multiple choice, so it might actually say, I don't know, in referring to text A, the writer says this, what is the meaning of that? So that's where you're then going to use your scan technique to look, because there obviously you will have 4 answers to choose from. You'll scan the text to look for one of those 4 answers, and there's your answer. Okay, so it's how you're going to use that text, how you're going to use the question, how you're going to bring that together. Okay, so let's look at the example. So this is an example advert for a triathlon. Okay, so this is a leaflet. Obviously, it's advertising a race which you can swim, cycle, and run in. That's what triathlons do. And obviously, it's set over different distances. So by using the information contained in that leaflet, you can come to a series of informed decisions. So quite a bit of information on that. But if you were someone that was looking to take part in one, it should have everything on that you need. Okay, so for example, if you wanted to enter triathlon with the shortest possible distances for each event, by reading the leaflet, you're able to identify that the Try Harder triathlon is the most appropriate event for you to enter. So that's clearly the one with the shortest distance. Okay, and that is first obviously bit of information. You've obviously got the titles of what they're called, you've got the dates that they're running, and then first bit of information is the distance. So if you're quite new to triathlons and you've never done it before, you certainly wouldn't want to then go to the highest distance. You'd want to ease yourself in gently, otherwise you might not finish it. So likewise, if you work weekends and you want to enter the triathlon on a weekday, again, you would obviously then go straight to the information. You know you're only looking for weekdays, so that only gives you one option, which is obviously the Friday. So you know that the answer is going to be the trail run. Okay, so let's have a little practice. So you've got a timetable. I want you to have a look at the timetable. So you've got a timetable Monday to Friday. You were going to jump on a train. So question number 1 is, what time do you have to catch the train from Radcliffe if you want to arrive at Sleaford by 12:30? You can either put your answer in the chat box or just shout out. So I've been nice for you and identified key information that you need to then look for in that timetable. Okay, so yeah, excellent. You've both gone for 10:50, spot on. Okay, so clearly in an exam, they're not going to highlight the key bits of information that you need to take from that question. That's what you need to do. So whether you do that by writing that down on your scrap bit of paper, so for me personally, if I was reading that, I would potentially write Radcliffe and Sleaford, or leave Radcliffe, arrive Sleaford, so I know what I'm looking for. Obviously, that's a pretty straightforward one, but on a level 2 exam, it's not necessarily going to be that easy, but it's just so you can kind of practice. So question number 2 is, what is the earliest time that you can arrive in Sleaford? Okay, so yeah, you've both gone for 8:30. Excellent, that's spot on. So again, it's just taking out the information that you need. So for me, when I first read that question, I then I was debating with myself, thinking, were they still talking about coming from Radcliffe? What was the earliest time that I could arrive in Sleaford? But you two haven't fallen into that trap, which is good to see. You've completely forgotten about Radcliffe because it hasn't mentioned Radcliffe in that second question. It's a completely second question. So well done for that. So question number 3 is, what time does the last train from Bingham depart? Okay, Chantal's gone with 3. Yep, well done. So you both got that. Okay, so like I've done, I've picked out the 2 bits of key information. You could, obviously, you don't want to try and skim any sort of questions because you need to read them and understand them in full. But like I said, you might want to read the question, go read the text, come back to the question. When you come back to that question, it's then picking out what the key information. And this is obviously really useful when you're doing your maths exam as well. So I'm pretty sure you're both doing maths. This is really, really good technique to use because your maths exam won't be as simple as add this number to this number. They will be written in texts like this. And this is potentially some, it's necessary, a bit of a maths question as well, really, because they're going to expect you to use timetables and things like that as well. So again, it's picking out that key information in the question. So another practice. So this time you've got a cinema listings. So question number 1 is, you want to watch the film with the most favourable rating. Which film should you choose? Again, slightly different information on this one, but should be pretty simple to locate. Again, it's just picking out the key information in that question. Okay, Montel's, yeah, you've both gone with Pulp Fiction. Excellent, well done. So yeah, for me, all you need to do is look at the favourable rating bit, look at the ratings. Favourable obviously means the highest. So question number 2, you want to watch a classic film. Which pre-1990 film or films could you choose to watch? Select your answer or answers on this list. Okay, let's see if you can get them all. Okay, so again, I've been nice and just highlighted the most important information in there, and that's pre-1990. Okay, so Chantel's gone Pulp Fiction again. Heather's gone 3. She's gone Rear Window, Alien, and Dance. Yeah, spot on. Well done. So yeah, the key information that on this one, this is an example of not necessarily a catch-out question, but they've put information in there that's irrelevant because they've referred to it being a classic film. There's nothing in that advert that says anything about them being classic films, and that's kind of a trap you don't want to fall into, because that's the whole point of a reading exam, is you only pick out the information that is relevant. So you might look at them and be like, well, none of those are classic. I've never even heard of them. So how are they a classic film? So you might think, well, none of them. But that's where that's in there, and that's not even relevant. The only bit that's relevant is the pre-1990 film. So anything with a date before 1990 is obviously where your answers come from. So well done, Heather. So question number 3 is, which film has the lowest rate? I haven't highlighted any key information in this one because I'm hoping that it's pretty straightforward. And again, we're using your math skills in here as well, so we're doing a bit of embedded learning today. So you've both gone with Rear Window. Excellent, well done. Okay, so another different practice. So this time, these are a set of directions. Okay, so have a read through the directions. Might even be nice and read them to you. So if you want to get to the local theatre from here, you need to. Okay, so just by reading that top line, you know it's a set of directions. So if this was an exam question and this was my text, you're not going to be as lucky. Your text is going to be a hell of a lot bigger than this. I would go to my question. So, what direction do you turn after walking through the centre of town? Okay, so the text says go straight up the road until you see the Park Catcher fishing shop, and then turn left. Take the second right where the library is. Cross the road at the zebra crossing, walk straight through the centre of town. At the end of the town centre, take a left turn at the bank. The theatre should be on your left-hand side, just past the tram shop. Okay, so I've read my question, I've read the text in full, gone back to my question. I'm going to pick out the key information. So it wants to know what direction I'm going to turn. So I'm going to turn, and after walking through the centre of town. So I'm going to skim read, I'm going to look for the centre of town, and then I'm going to find my answer. What's the answer after? Where am I turning after the centre of town? Okay, you both gone left. So these are your examples, and yeah, just turn left at the bank. So excellent, well done. So question number 2. Obviously, I'm not going to read the instructions out again, so you can use your scanning. So number the buildings you will see in the correct order if you follow the directions above. So you've got these 5 buildings are mentioned in the directions. The first one is done for you, so the carp catcher is number 1. Which one's number 2? You can just write that in the chat box. So what do you pass after the carp catcher? So you pass the library. Yeah, you do. Excellent. What's number 3? Heather's gone with the bank. Excellent. Well done. What's number 4? Heather's gone with the theatre. Excellent. Well done. And number 5. What's the last thing you're going to see? Well done, Chantal. You got the theatre as well. And yeah, transport. Well done. So that's obviously in the basic session today on how to locate information, the importance of obviously using your different reading techniques, so your skimming, your scanning, and your reading in full. I've obviously given you some tips on your exam in how to use that, when to use that. So as I said earlier, make sure when you get into your reading exam, you know you're going to be presented with 3 different texts. Don't read any of the texts until you need to. Go to the questions first and only go to that particular text when you know that that question is asking you about that text. Make sure you make notes, pick out the key information from the question, and then make notes if you wish, unless you've got really good memory as you're reading through the text, because they will be quite lengthy texts. They're obviously not going to be, as I said earlier, as easy as what we've done today. Okay, so as always, we'll have a quick fun quiz based on what you've learnt today. So you've both been on Kahoot, so if you can get that open for me, and I will get it all ready. Chantal, are you able to get on Kahoot today? If not, Heather's definitely going to win if she's playing on her own. Hopefully you can. The game pin's now on the screen, so it's 3925119. Excellent. Okay, so as always, the questions are just based on what we've gone through today, your different reading techniques. You're both in, so I'll read out the questions, and don't forget they are timed. Just do your best. Obviously, it is just for fun, so don't worry. Okay, first question coming up. So, what are the 3 main reading techniques? Excellent, well done. So we've both listened today, both got it right. Heather was just a little bit quicker, but she's an expert. Okay, which reading technique would you use when reading a novel? Yeah, so the answer was detailed. So if you read a novel, you need to read it in detail. It's a book, and if you don't read it in detail, you're not going to know what's going on. Okay, well done. Next question. What would you look out for to help you skim read? Okay, so yeah, subtitles is the correct answer. And remember, skim reading is just to pick out the, quickly go through it, pick out the bits of information that you need. So the subtitles are going to help you, especially if the questions ask you something very specific. They may be in the subtitles, and you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that bit. I need to read that bit again just to find the answer. Okay, well done, Heather. 3 in a row. Next question. When scanning, you should have an idea of what you're looking for. Excellent. So So yeah, it's definitely true. Obviously, how can you scan something if you don't know what you're actually looking for? So that's where my technique of reading the question and knowing what it wants you to find, then go and scan it. Last question coming up. Well done, Heather. Okay, you should always read the question before the text. Excellent. Yeah, nice to hear. Nice to see that you've been listening to me. I have mentioned it several times, so brilliant. Well done. So well done, Heather. Another win for you there. So, any questions on the session that we've gone through today? If you have, you can obviously stay on afterwards. I will stop the recording shortly and we can have a chat. If you haven't, thank you very much for joining. If you want to email me a question or you want some practice stuff, then let me know and I can always help you. But in general, it's just one of those skills that you just need to keep practicing. And like I said, use it with something that you're interested in. So if you're reading through a lot of blogs or stuff on social media, when you're reading it, think about it and think about what sort of information you can pick out from it. So thank you very much for coming on today's session and well done.